Ready? So this is for both of you. Have you, or I guess let's start with Ron. For Ron, have you had a chance to speak with ownership yet to get just kind of parameters on, what this offseason may look like and what you're able to do this offseason?
Well, very briefly, very simple, and for the most part, I will meet with them both on, not just I, but we will meet with them on Monday.
And then as far as any staff changes, are you anticipating significant change there?
What I'm doing right now is finishing up the process I told you guys I was going to go through as far as evaluations and conversations and stuff like that.
For both of you, do you worry that the potential sale will affect your ability to make moves in the offseason?
Yeah, I don't worry about that. I mean, we're really focused on what we need to do to get better for next season, and that's totally out of our hands. I don't worry about things I can't control.
Pretty much the same. I mean, we're going to do what we're supposed to do as far as getting ourselves ready to go forward. We've got to look at what's coming up in the draft, what's coming up in free agency. We look at what we have on our roster and finish those evaluations. Finish the evaluations of myself, the staff, and what we do.
What is your plan at quarterback, and do you expect Carson Wentz to be with the team next season?
Yeah, we're currently working through all that and having discussions. We're still in that kind of season review process. Over the next few days, we'll be talking about all those things and trying to sort that out. We got to talk about budget, what we have to spend, how we want to allocate resources, evaluate depth in terms of draft and free agency, where those positions are, and where we think we can add talent. So we're working through all that right now.
What did you make of the quarterback play this year, Martin? I mean, we've heard from Ron on a weekly basis, but what's your assessment of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had, several talented guys. All those guys have to have ability, have talent. As I mentioned to you guys before, we did a lot of work on Carson. We knew a lot about him, the good, the bad, the ugly. We thought he was a good fit for how we wanted to play football. We weren't able to play the style of ball we wanted to play the first couple games, as you guys saw. Didn't have B-Rob, didn't have the run game going the way that we wanted it going. We were 2-1 pass run, which is not our formula. As you saw this last game, we were 2-1 run pass. For every time that we threw the ball, we ran the ball twice. That's how we want to play. We weren't able to play that way early in the season with Carson, but he's a very talented guy. Second overall pick. We did a lot of work on him, talking to people about his play, about his presence in the locker room and the whole deal. We felt very, very comfortable bringing him in, and we thought he would fit how we wanted to play. With regard to Taylor, he's just been exceptional, since I've been here. Prior to me getting here, obviously played great in that playoff game against Tampa Bay. Last year, we signed Ryan Fitzpatrick to start him. He played 16 snaps. Taylor played the whole season for us last year. This past season, we brought Carson in. He waits his turn, and when his turn comes, he steps in and he plays great football for us. So he was instrumental, I thought, in salvaging our season. I thought he did a really good job getting us back on track and getting us back to winning games. As far as Sam, I mean, you guys saw he was impressive. First start for him, his first pass being a touchdown pass. We kind of were like, hey, just keep doing that, So he got off to a really good start, and there's going to be a lot of evaluation process for him as well. We'll see where it all shakes out.
And Ron, you've briefly highlighted some areas of the team that you think you need to improve on, but for you specifically, coach, decision maker, where do you think you can be better to better position this team for more success?
Well, I just kind of like the direction we've headed. I know one of the things we talked about was taking a big step from last year, being in year 3. And, we didn't quite get into the playoffs like we wanted to, but the biggest thing that we did was we took the kind of step I think that gives us the right direction headed, that puts us where we want to be. I think, again, if we can go out and we can add some talent in some areas, continue to work on what our formula is, I think it gives us an opportunity to continue to grow and get better. For me personally, I just want to continue to grow as a football coach, continue to look at the things that we do and see how we can improve them, see how we can utilize the talent that we have, and then as a decision maker, continue to collaborate with Martin and his staff of guys and scouts, and so we can make good decisions going forward. I think we've done a pretty good job trying to put talent in place. You look at some of the things that we've done with some of the young guys and development you've seen in some of the young guys. I think it's very promising. I think some of the things that we did, and one of the things that we did during the draft, and Martin orchestrated it, was a trade in the first round, so we could go backwards. Picked up Jahan, we picked up B-Rob, we picked up Sam, we picked up Cole Turner. I mean, 4 young guys that we think can be part of what we're doing going forward, and those are the kind of things that we want to be able to get better at, and continue to find that kind of talent, because one of the things that when Martin and Marty came in, we talked about was roster building as much as we can through the draft and putting those pieces into place. A couple examples of some of those pieces that really stepped up for us, we were very happy about was Defo, a young man that came in and did a really nice job for us. Those are the kind of things that we're looking for through this draft, through these draft processes that we've gone through.
Ron, you talked about improvement, but maybe not getting over the hump. How would you view maybe staff changes or front office changes getting you back into the playoffs?
Well, I think we're going to evaluate and see how we can get better more so than anything else. I mean, there's a fine line when you start doing things, and when you do them, you've got to make sure that you're doing them for the right reasons, and they're going to create the right opportunities for you.
And then, Martin, I wanted to ask, for the past 2 years, you guys have tried the veteran quarterback route. It hasn't worked. Injuries have derailed things. How does that 2 years of experience impact how maybe you pursue quarterbacks this season?
Well, you pretty much have to enter every season and look at the entire landscape of what's available. And I thought we did a really good job of that last year. We talked about drafting guys, we talked about who we could trade for, and we talked about free agents. And we went through the entire process of all those guys and did a very thorough evaluation. We will do the same thing this year. We're not going to rule out acquiring a vet. We'll go through the entire landscape of who's available. We'll evaluate them, and we'll get to a consensus on somebody.
And Ron, obviously the defense take a big step forward this year. Duran playing a big part of that. How important is he to the off-season plans?
Well, we think he's a piece. He fits the formula of what we want to do and how we want to play, and he's got the skill set that you would like to have. We think his presence on the football field was outstanding this season, and he did a lot of good things for us. And it is most certainly something that we have to talk about and make sure we can figure it out as we go forward.
Ron, after struggling to find an answer at quarterback the last few years, why do you feel like this offseason will be different? Like, what for the end result to be better?
Well, I think going into it, I think we're in a much better place.
And Martin, just what did never mind. Sorry. Also, Ron, with going through your experience in Carolina when there was an ownership change, how did that offseason before the team was actually sold, how can that impact, or how can that experience guide you, how you go about this offseason?
Well, the biggest thing is in Carolina when I went through that, it was pretty much, Ron, you've got to do business as normal. And that's what we tried to do. We tried to stay business as normal. We prepared for the draft like we normally did. We tried to put all the pieces into place like we normally would. We went out and did the free agency thing like we normally would. So really it didn't impact those things because, for the most part, if you stop working, they may not get that type of product you want.
Coach, obviously you feel good about Kendall Fuller, Derek Forrest, all those other people, starters in the secondary, but how do you feel like the depth players and maybe the rookies in that group sort of developed throughout the season?
Well, I think, after we made the William Jackson trade, you could see the need to put the young guys out there. One thing that did happen, though, is, when you trade a veteran player, now you're instantly getting into your depth. And so we had a group of young guys that we were working on that now had to step up. One guy who did step up that really helped us out an awful lot, and I wouldn't call him a young guy, is just Danny Johnson. He continues to be prepared, be ready to play, and every time he's had an opportunity, he's helped us out and he's done a really nice job. We got several young guys that we got to find out more about, and they'll get opportunities once we get into the off-season workout program. But Christian Holmes is a young man who did some good things and did have a couple of tough outings, or actually one tough outing against the Giants. But he's a young guy that shows some promise, especially on special teams. He was a tremendous contributor there for us. Very pleased with what we got from Percy. Thought Percy had a great opportunity this past Sunday and really showed out that he is capable. And again, he excelled on special teams. We have Wild Goose, who a guy we gave some opportunities on early on. I mean, we threw him right into the fire, and he tried to play nickel and learn. But it was tough anytime you come in the middle of the season and you're expected to pick things up instantly. Castrofield's another young man that we plucked and grabbed him on the final cut down day as a guy that some people wanted to put on their practice squad, but he was a guy we grabbed, and we had him on the 53 until he got hurt. So we've got a good group of young guys that we're curious about. We most certainly do look to add to that group, and talking with Martin earlier, some things that we got to look at. That's one of the positions we most certainly want to see if we can add some more depth to, whether it's through free agency or through the draft. But, it is a position of interest for us.
For either of you guys, Taylor Heineke has said he would like to come back or be open to coming back. Are you guys open to Taylor coming back in some capacity?
Yes, I think, again, all our guys are guys that we're going to evaluate and see where they fit for us. Taylor is a guy that, has done some really good things for us.
Martin, the offensive line, you guys made some changes there last year. How did you evaluate the offensive line this year, and do you foresee some similar kind of changes this year?
Yeah, well, we're evaluating every position now. So the offensive line, obviously, there's a need, I think, to continue to add young people to that group, to get younger there. We've had a number of injuries over the last couple of years. We got to evaluate that process and why that happens. But no, those guys, when we play our formula and our style of football, those guys play very well for us.
Martin,
I
this
just
offseason.
want to echo real quick on that too. Unfortunately, the position that's really we've had a lot of injuries is center, and it's something we got to like Martin said, we got to look at and figure out how we can solidify that group and hopefully not have to go through that again.
Martin, with the way the defense has played this year, a lot of guys most likely going to come back next year. Do you see your guys as a franchise being able to get a young quarterback and then build the offense around that quarterback?
Yeah, well, it kind of goes hand in hand. It's complementary football. Like I said, our formula of football is playing great defense, running the ball, having the quarterback utilize play action off our run scheme. That's what has worked for us. So we plan to build it that way. Our defense did well this year. Finished up, I think, third in yards, seventh in yards, third in scoring. But our defense played well down the stretch. Slow start, but played really well overall. We want to build on that. Keep adding quality players to our defense. Find the right quarterback to lead us and play our brand of football next year.
And Ron, you've done a great job this season of shielding your players and making them focused on the task at hand every week. We're talking to them in the locker room after the game yesterday. They said that they really ride for you and that they really feel like you love them for real, and that's a direct quote. But for you as a coach, being such a player's coach, is that something that you foresaw, being a player yourself and then now seeing how you operate and run your team?
Well, one of the sayings that I kind of hear too is, the players don't care until they know you care. And I just want to make sure they understand that. But, more importantly, the biggest thing is, just trying to make sure we can keep them focused in on the task at hand. I know there's been a lot of things that have swirled around us the last few years, but the one thing I really appreciate is the way that they've played for us when we've gotten on the field. I know 2 weeks ago we didn't play the way we wanted against Cleveland. And then coming into the last game, I know several people thought they would roll over and quit. And that's not who they are. Those young men came out and they played to their abilities. And it's funny because I know a lot of people said to me, well, that's who they can be. No, that's not who they can be. That's who they are. That's who they are. I mean, they have a chance to be a really good football team, and they play that way. That's who they really are. And that's what I've tried to instill in them is that, have the confidence to be who you are. And that was exciting. And it was really cool to talk with. I talked to everybody but two guys that had some things they had to take care of, and I will talk with them eventually. But I talked to the entire roster, and coming out of that meeting, the positivity of what we're doing, I think, really echoed with them. And again, it's something that we most certainly can build on. We need to build on, and we need to pick up where we left off.
For both of you, you have said consistently you want to be a run-first team. Is that because of the personnel you have at quarterback, or is that a philosophical belief because most of the league seems to go the opposite way?
I think it's a philosophical belief. I mean, for me it is. I've been involved with that. I think a big part of it is that you've got to be able to help your defense as well. You know, if you look at a lot of the teams that do end up at the end where they are, most of them rush for over 1,000 yards as an offense, well over 1,000, I should say, and I think they control the tempo of the game, and I think that's what we need to do to win football games. We need to control that tempo of the game. You know, I do believe in a two-back system. You know, I've had success with that, and I believe we had some pretty good success with it. You know, unfortunately, both those young men for us ended up on injured reserve, but well, B-Rob wasn't injured. B-Rob just didn't finish the last game. But you know, they're a talented group of guys, and we've got to be able to use them. You know, we've got some talented positions, and we've got to be able to get the ball in those guys' hands.
I think we're all products of our experience in this league, you know, and in my experience here, the most success that I had was playing here. And we were a run-first football team, and we were running back by committee football team, you know. And so that's what I've had success with. When we had success in Detroit in 2014, we had a run-first orientation. I know coaches had a pretty good running back when you played too, you know, in Chicago, you know. So I think we're products of that and what we've experienced, and that's where I've had the most success. And I know that late in the year, that becomes really, really important. And when you can't run the football late in the year, it makes it very, very difficult to advance, make the playoffs, or have success in the playoffs. So that's why I think it's really important. And the physicality of the game, I think, is what can make a good team better, you know, or, you know, an average team good. You know, when you can out-hit somebody, it gives you a chance to win every game.
Also, as part of your self-evaluation, the last 2 years, you've gotten off to slow starts. How do you self-evaluate OTAs, training camp, preseason, or what do you think you might look at in that regard?
I think one of the things that we have to take a look at is the injuries coming out of camp. We had a lot of soft tissue injuries this year, and it's really the first time. So far, the one major correlation that we found, it was one of the warmest summers we've ever had. And so we probably have to take a look at how we practice when the temperature goes up. That's probably one of the things. One of the other things that we're most certainly going to look at is working with another team. You know, I go back to some of the experiences I had in my previous stint. We had a couple of we actually did it 3 times, and 2 of those 3 times we came out and we had really good years. So it's something we're going to take a look at also in this offseason.
Ron, can you understand? You won 7 games your first year. You won 7 games your second year. 8 games the third year. Mm-hmm. Can you understand that fans could have a hard time seeing how is that a big step forward? How did you make a step forward when the win total is essentially the same?
I would like to say the play of our players. You know, we had some extraordinary circumstances and situations my first year. My second year, obviously, that was probably the most disappointing. But this year, you look at some of the things that we did, and you like to say, you know, they showed that they can come out and fight and play hard. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's not easy. It's not simple. Coming back from where we were, enduring the things that we've endured, you'd like to believe that people understand that. You know, somebody getting shot and not playing for 4 games, and he was a big part, and we tried to show that in the preseason. You think, okay, maybe. You know, and that's all part of it. But again, I really do think that you look at some of the things that we've done, you look at the youth on this football team, how these young guys have played, you look at the number of young guys we've put on the football field that played for us, that played meaningful minutes in big games and won. You like to think that that shows that they are growing, that they're developing, they understand what it takes now. So I'd like to think that shows something. It's not always on what's on the won-loss record that indicates whether you've grown a little bit or not. It's been my experience that winning certain types of games are important, and I think we did some of those things. You know, we've done it a couple of times where we beat the most, you know, the last undefeated team in games that we weren't picked to even come close. We've handled those types of moments, so I think there's been some growth. I'm not saying we're there, but I'd like to think that we have a chance to get there. I thought last year we have a chance to take a step, and I do think we took a step. Am I disappointed we didn't get in the playoffs? Darn right I am. We had an opportunity to control our own destiny, and we didn't do the things that we needed to at the right time. You know, but there were some things that we can't control. So the best thing we can do is control what we can, and that's the growth and development of our players.
And how did you think Scott Turner did as offensive coordinator this year?
I think Scott did his job, did the things that he tried to do, and, you know, we're going to self-evaluate and go through that process.
For both of you, back to Deron Payne. When you look back at the philosophy that you guys had at the beginning of the year or in the offseason to not extend him at that point, how do you look back at that decision now after considering the year that he's had and just everything else?
So using hindsight.
For philosophy, I'm curious, what was the philosophy at that point to not do it versus where you guys are at now?
Well, I think, again, it's something you take a long look at. You look at players that are playing and what's going on and what's happening and how well they've done consistently and stuff, and you go through that entire process and then you come up with your decision.
Part of the logic to a degree is, one, teams don't typically pay 2 defensive tackles that kind of money, and then you have 4 defensive linemen drafted in the first round, and extending everybody would be a challenge. All those things still remain in play. So how do you kind of work through that, or do you dismiss that notion that you can't extend 4 of them or 2 defensive tackles?
Well, I think you got to look at the impact he's going to have on your football team, whether he's here or he's not here, and then decide from that.
So is the franchise tag something you guys would consider, or is that not something you would consider?
Well, I'm not going to get into the negotiations part, but when it comes to negotiations, I'll let Martin answer that one.
Yeah, we're working through that process now. Obviously, Deron is an important part of what we're doing. A great year this year, 11.5 sacks. Guy played outstanding football this year. He's always been disruptive. He's always been in the backfield. He's always been around the ball. But this was the first year he really was finishing the way that he finished this year. So he played outstanding football for us. It'd be difficult, to move forward without him. Obviously, we have a plan, and we definitely want to get him back.
Okay, that'll finish me off. That's perfect. Thanks. Rod, when you're big on talking to the players and team leaders and stuff, when you're doing your staff evaluations, how much do you take into account what sort of feedback you're getting from players?
Well, I take into account everything that I get, not just from players, but from coaches themselves, from what I look at, what I observe on the field, on the tape. I mean, there's a lot for me to consider going forward.
And then, again, looking at quarterback, how much is one game of Sam Howell? What does that do for you going forward in there, and how does that factor in the decision-making, whatever you saw, and how do you compare it against what might be coming out in the draft, et cetera?
So that's exactly. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just very, very small sample, but yes, that's a great point. We compare it with what's going to be available. What we've seen in practice from him has been very good. It translated very well to the game, which has not always been the case with other players in the past. He practiced very well throughout the season. We gave him an opportunity late, and he went in and played the way that he practiced. And he's just got a very, very calm demeanor. The guy has the right attitude. He's got a very quiet confidence about him. And it's promising, and it's good to have Sam as an option as we move forward. And we're talking through what the other alternatives are right now.
Last thing on the quarterbacks for both you guys, and going back to some of the Carson stuff, or do you look back and reevaluate the process, good or bad, right or wrong, that led you to him? Do you how much do you evaluate the process there?
Well, looking at the process, and which I have gone back and looked at, I think all the stuff that we got was the stuff that you need in terms of evaluations. It's just sometimes there's some things that are unforeseen. I mean, again, we didn't expect Fitz to go down after 16 plays, in 2021, and we didn't. We had a formula we wanted to use, and we didn't use it initially. And once we got to it, then we started to have the success. But by then, Carson was he was out with the injury.
Along the same lines for both of you, Martin, you said that Carson fit the style of play that you guys wanted to play, and then you ended up winning with Taylor. Two pretty different quarterbacks. So I guess what are the qualities you're looking for at that position?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the guy has to be a leader. He has to have arm strength. He has to have an NFL caliber arm. He has to be a guy that can create off schedule. That when things break down, he can make something happen that's positive. And that's what we're looking for in that position. And some guys have some of those attributes that are stronger than others, but you have to have the complete package. And it really, again, the quarterback is one person on the field. Obviously, a very critical position, touches the ball every single play. But what you have around him is really so important. What kind of weapons do you have for him? What kind of defense do you have? Is he playing from behind a lot? Is he able to get into a rhythm and stay on the field? Or is the other team running the ball? I mean, the first couple of games, I think we were giving up about 7.5 yards a carry the first 2 games. So we weren't able to get on the field and stay on the field consistently. The other teams were driving the ball on us and keeping us off the field. We couldn't get into any type of rhythm, you know. So all those things come into play. And it's difficult for one guy to come in and completely flip everything. That's hard to do. You have to have complementary football where the defense helps out the offense stays on the field, keeps the other offense off the field. All those things are needed to be successful. And when we play with that formula, when those things happened, we play well. And when we weren't able to, those were the games that we didn't play as well in.
Considering your draft position this year and the assets you traded last year, how aggressive can you be, or how aggressive would you want to be in either trading up or trading for a veteran if that's the solution you land on?
Well, I think the biggest thing, more so than anything else, is, you know, if we do like we did last year, we look at what the possibilities are, and one of the scenarios came up, and you got to be willing to pull the trigger. And, you know, as I alluded earlier, Martin did a great job in terms of that. We had talked about what the potential was, and as it started to come fruition, we did it. And we'll do the same thing, I think. We'll take a look at what the situations are, what they could be. You know, we went through the scenarios. We presented them to each other, talked about them, and the scenario that we thought was going to happen actually did. And that was one of the cool things that we had gone through that and prepared ourselves for it.
After saying year 3 was a big leap and making progress in the players' play, but not necessarily the record, do you feel like year 4 is really everything's on the line and this could be kind of the defining campaign for you two?
We'll see.
With that,
go ahead.
Yeah, with that, I mean, if a new owner comes in, it seems like, you know, that you prove yourself. What do you think about the possibility of having to prove to someone new, or are you guys basically in limbo with all this?
No. The only thing I can do is what I intend to do. Okay, and I'm intended to coach this football team, do the best we can, and see what happens.
We've seen it with Terry. We've seen it with John. You've got Cam Curl going into the last year of his contract. How do you guys approach that with a player that you said is really important to your defense?
Well, he is a part of what we're doing, but, you know, again, it's something that we have to look at, you know, and decide and figure it out. I mean, we've got players that obviously we've got to be able to get back on the football field and, you know, do what we have to do. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, again, we are definitely in an evaluation process. See, the big thing you guys got to understand too is we can't answer those questions directly because, you know, if we do, we start telling everybody what we want to do, players included and their agents. You know, but these are all guys that we know they fit. We know they're part of what we want to do. So we'll go and see what happens.
Like with John and Terry before him, is Cam a type of player you could identify as someone you want here for the long haul?
He is somebody that fits what we do. You know, again, we just have to. You got to be careful at this point because I promise you sit down and he goes to negotiate, and the first thing the guy does is puts the paper out, and right there it says, "Wow, you just said he's a very, 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 very important part." And that's what we're trying to avoid. I mean, that's why we can't answer that question directly because we get it, we understand, and he is a part of what we're trying to do. But you know, to sit here and play our hand right now, it doesn't make sense for us.
And we are still working through a lot of situations. And, you know, when you allocate resources in one spot, you don't have them for a different spot. And all that has to fit into what we're trying to do. So it's an ongoing process, an ongoing discussion.
What's just the timeline then for veterans that you might make changes with salary cap-wise? Is that come closer to new league year, or is that part of the evaluation process?
That's part of the evaluation process. But, you know, Martin will tell you that's the stuff that when we start getting into the budget stuff next week that we're going to have to look at.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Just a reminder, the annex is closing at 3 for the season.